Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. 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 Artlist.io.
All right. All right. Let's get started. 2 days in a row of this. I don't know that I promise to stream every day that Crown is above 20 cents, but it's a streak. 2 counts as a streak, is it not? Welcome to everybody that joined. Be sure to tune into the PFL official stream with Fib and Monos covering the late night races. I think we're gonna talk about a couple horses that we maybe would expect to see there based on quality for sure in the claiming races, and talk about some of the marketplace activity that's happened. Call it in the last 24 hours. Like I said, I streamed yesterday, talked a lot about dynamics of how Crown is allocated between crop 1, so foals that are 1 year old now that will be 2 and racing eligible on Monday, versus Gen 0. If that's of interest to you, check it out. There's past broadcasts that you can catch on YouTube about breeding reports to try to level the playing fields between you and I on what people with 20 breeding reports, or I guess 20 PFPs and hundreds of breeding reports know or think they know, versus what you can't see. So I think those are pretty good as well. But let's dive in. I'm going to share my screen. And similar to last time, nothing to hide, so you get the full screen. So let's start with what we did today. If that's selfish or not, too bad. We get to decide. I had told some of our co-owners that I thought I was done buying horses because God knows we do not need more horses. We need to get more horses in the hands of new stables and grow the game. But there was a few things that I personally didn't want to pass up. And I'll try to talk you through the thought process on some of those. Now, the caveat is always the same on these streams is I talk about what I know and I try to refrain from talking about what I don't know. The problem with that is what I tend to know fairly well is the top end. So this isn't always perfectly relevant for the lower ranges, but I think the thought process itself can help evaluate what your options are at the lower range. And I'll talk about some of the conversations I had today. There was a new stable that had reached out to us about acquiring a colt that could race on Monday. And they ended up getting one from shout out to Soulmate Stables, got one from him. So we'll certainly talk about that when we come up to it on marketplace activity. But talk about where I expect a horse like that to race. And that's kind of where we're going to start, but we're going to start with Gen 0 still. Shout out to, is it Ocean View? A new stable name at minimum. Hopefully a new person as well. Bought like 30 horses or something, maybe more than that in the last couple of days. And they were sweeping floor horses of racing eligible horses. So very quickly, the meta developed that any horse that had 4 legs was probably a profitable horse. And again, on yesterday's stream, we talked a little bit about, is that sustainable? Is that the best path forward? I guess we'll find out. If Crown wants to continue to moon, what I think about that subject doesn't even really necessarily matter. But it's certainly a viable strategy for a couple of days. And he's buying those at a price point where, with Crown price today, and again, this is not an endorsement or detrimental commentary towards Crown. It's not financial advice. But the price of Crown, those horses pay themselves off in 2 races. Like, I'd played what we eloquently call the other game. And my thought process then was I want to be able to pay off a big purchase start to finish in 3 months' time, or know that even if I couldn't in 3 months' time, that it was so obvious I was going to get it back. So that meant, if I didn't earn it racing, that breeding revenue streams were so obvious and more or less foolproof in that sense that I could pay that off. So if you contrast 3 months, which I think is realistically a healthy timeline, it really is, to 2 races or 2 days, yeah, we might have been Icarus a bit and might have flown a little too close to the sun for a touch there, but that doesn't mean Crown is not a super well developed token. It does not mean it couldn't go higher. Um, Prices similar to this, I think people are speculating more on the long term sustainability and the appeal of the game than they are the current market dynamics of what a yield for power would look like. And if you're more curious about Crown, shout out to Gamesh, who wrote a very short piece. Gamesh is like me, only in written format. That why choose 12 words when 16,000 will do? But by all accounts, people are crediting a lot of the success of Crown in the last couple of days to that blog post. So definitely go check it out, read up, ask around, ask in the Discord questions that you have specific to Crown as an investor, Crown as a racing stable, which I can better speak to than as an investor in that sense. But so we were watching races today, and I think most people woke up, at least if you're stateside, and let's say Crown was 34 cents, something like that, at least when I got up. And the race slate currently as it stands starts with 5K claimers, which if you're new here, that's a little over $50. And at 34 cents, even if you had 12 horses in a 12 horse race, last place makes money. So great. That's working stupendously for everybody. And at the time, like the in-game marketplace, the floor for a racing eligible Gen Zero. So when we talk about Gen Zeros, especially in the conversation I'm about to go into, make sure it's racing eligible, because you can filter based on age or get to the point where you're seeing Gen Zeros, but a lot of Gen Zeros have retired. So my commentary about what might be viable when I'm talking about Gen Zero are things that are racing now and continue to race going into next season. So when I woke up, the race lobbies for the 5K claimers, if the floor for a racing eligible horse was, call it 12,000, maybe even 15,000 at the time, if the worst racing eligible horse is going for 15,000 or listed at 15,000, then every 5K horse was going to get claimed, and it did. So that's one part of an actual rational market, that if the horse is worth more than what is available, certainly scoop those up. We claimed or put in claims on a couple. We didn't get any. I was pretty. Okay, yeah, it did just load weird on me. Probably entered in the wrong race, which is a little bit unfortunate for the owners or the enters of those horses, unless they're trying to move them. Like, claimers are great in the sense of they provide liquidity. If that horse isn't the perfect horse for you anymore, or you have too many horses, or you no longer want to participate in that archetype, throw in a claimer where it has some win equity. Because if it has some win equity, that also means it's got some claim equity for someone else. And as the day progressed, we got up to 40 some cents on Crown. It's pretty exciting for a lot of people. We even saw a market sale of Crown of about, I think it was like $28,000, which no one wants to see a market sale of Crown of $28,000. But what I think it shows or showcases in this sense was, if you look like 3 days ago, 4 days ago, 5 days ago, maybe, I don't think the total value locked was even 28,000. So your price action on a trade of that size does not compute. And since then, I know at one point we were for sure in the low 200,000 figures. So things have ramped up quickly, but some of it's ramped up in the right way. So we are seeing more liquidity to it, which has allowed people to make some trades. And for a tight supply token like this to be able to absorb that kind of size, I mean, obviously the price went down a little bit after, and then it's kind of struggled a little bit since. But ultimately, it's held up better than I think a lot of people would have actually expected in the short term. And I guess the comments I can add to that is, the people that are racing daily, I just referred to horses that could be $50 horses and pay themselves off in 2 races. A lot of that paying off is coming through Crown. They would probably turn around and sell the Crown. So I think we're seeing Crown get out of the hands of the racing speculators and into the hands of interested participants. And as that rotation continues, it probably could create a pretty healthy market. Certainly there's going to be more Crown to be made by racers daily. But I think if it ends up in the right hands, it could be good. Shout out to Lacey. Someday you'll have to join on the stream, as long as that's not prohibited in PFL circles. But I've got this great gap data screen up because I don't like to have my big mug on the entire screen the entire time. So let's pay off the teas and get into what we did today. So it started with in a 20K claimer. We saw, in my opinion, again, this would be a great horse for a lot of stables, so take that with a grain of salt. We saw an S- with, like, call it 4 total preferences. I don't know what the total boost count on it was. Probably wasn't the right horse for a 20K claimer. So fired a claim on that. There was only 2 people that claimed that. So when I was talking about the 5K claimers, there were, in some cases, like 20 plus claims on these horses. And I hope that's 20 individuals. I suspect it's not, but if we can get to a point where we're getting new people, getting them to get the horses, and they don't have to create 3 stables just to be able to claim a horse, that would be appreciated on my end. That's for sure. But once it got up to the 20K ones, to me, it seemed like a no-brainer. It's already registered in a race tomorrow. We can pull that up. You can see how poor our stable is at this point. I won't even hide it. We spent a fair bit of money today reinvesting in buying horses from other people. Obviously, always breed a little bit externally each month. But if I go to our racing eligible horses, they're all registered. So the initial claimer I'm talking about here is this Rex Ivy, and I'll blow it up here a little bit so it's easier to see. Again, in my opinion, pretty modest horse. But I claimed it in a 20K claimer, and I don't know that it can compete in an 83K claimer. It probably can't. But that's where you're going for what is the crown gift associated with that race. How many horses will ultimately end up entering that race? We'll get more than 5, certainly. We're 16 hours out. Do we get 8? Do we get 10? And even if we got 8, I would think there's a small chance it hits the podium. And if it doesn't, oh well, maybe next time then I'll race it in 75K claimers or 65K claimers. Like, ultimately, I'm pretty sure if I put it in a 40K claimer, that either one, it would actually have a lot of win equity at 40K, or 2, it outright gets claimed. And Fairness and Disclosure Act, I listed this horse basically immediately after claiming it. I thought it was more or less mispriced by being entered in a claimer. After this race, I will more or less, or more likely than not, relist the horse again. I'm not trying to get you to buy this horse. I'm talking about how I evaluate a horse that looks like this, whether it was in my stable or anybody else's, and the thought process of evaluating claimers and where I think maybe a horse can run. Like I said, I think this is definitely the peak, even for Gen 0 horses. If this was a Crop 1 horse, the horses that'll start on Monday, realistically, if this was a Crop 1, it probably is best suited for like 15K claimers would be my guess at that point. Maybe 20. I'm not sure. We'll see. No one's seen a Crop 1 horse race, and no one's seen what people's risk appetite is for dropping horses in races. But then the day progressed a little bit further, and then we get to the higher buy-in claimers. And I was kind of sweating this one a little bit because I thought I saw something that like all the sharp people weren't seeing. Like, shout out to Crypto Hog. Love the actual Clanosaurus Silks, Ghost. There's a lot of people that watch claimers very closely. probably have a better eye for like actually where a horse can be profitable in claimers from a racing perspective. And I thought I'd seen something that everybody was just missing. I talked with those two, and I talked with a few people after that. What we ended up doing is we claimed a horse for 75,000 Derby, and it was a right turf. Hold on. Shout out to the Gap Data guys. Awesome tool. Just takes a little bit to load. Could even be my internet. So if you go to racing, there's only 142 right turf soft, and that doesn't mean a left turf soft couldn't beat a right turf soft horse, and it doesn't mean a right dirt soft horse couldn't beat a right turf soft. So this isn't the full population of what you'll see race there, especially in competitive environments. But then if you drill in further than that, and you filter based on grade. Now, on the Gap Data tools, it only gives you the filters that are available, which means there's literally not an S racing. There's not an S plus that is currently racing from Gen 0. So when I got to this, I checked the box to see how many S minuses are in the population still racing. There are only 4. We claimed Thunderstorm. I probably would have taken out the space and lowercase the S. But that's what happens when you buy a horse that you can name yourself. There's a little value added in that. So of the 4, and I'll make this a little bit bigger because it is a little hard to see. Maybe not that big. We'll see. Or did it just revert in size? It's not seeming to want to take my size adjustments. Well, that's not working. So I will go back to 100% so it doesn't get crazy when we go to the next page. Of the 4, Wrecking Ball, all of them are Colts, obviously, is a 1.0 right, 0.5 turf, 1.5 soft. We claimed Thunderstorm, 2.5 is better by a considerable margin, 2.5 or 1.5, sorry. Turf is 3.0, 2.5 better. Soft is the same, but basically, objectively, this is a better horse than Wrecking Ball. Then Influencer's the next one that's out there. 2.0, again, we're better by 0.5. I'd say that's meaningful, but it's not game-changing. And then on turf, 3 versus 1.5, I would say that is very meaningful. And then actually that horse has an advantage on soft. So if you cross out right and soft and call it a wash there, we still have a 1.5 advantage on turf. And based on how the Gen 0 horses were kind of developed, I'll say that if it has really good preferences like this is a 7 preference horse? Yes, 7 preference horse. It also means it has really good stats for start, speed, finish, heart, temper. So then the other horse is Barbadillo, and I've run into this horse a few times in me trying to race off preference to try to scoop a pot, and it's proven to be a pretty good horse. Preferences are the exact same. These 2 horses are more or less replicas of one another. But you can see the thought process of, okay, this was a 75K claimer. A lot of people don't have that much money to put into the game. I understand. But if I use the tools that are available again, shout out to the Gap Data guys, I can see fairly objectively within its archetype. Again, I said a left turf soft horse could probably beat this because there's a lot of S left turf soft horses racing. There may be right turf firm horses that could beat this. I know Galad is a nice S that's out there. We even have a good S minus at the right turf soft or right turf firm. But within its own niche, it's kind of tied for best in class. So even if it's kind of an expensive horse, it was kind of a no-brainer for us. And I truly believe that it's a no-brainer for us and racing equity. So again, the point of the focal point of yesterday's stream was to talk about how Crown is allocated between Crop 1 and Gen 0. The TLDR is, I wish we were going to incentivize Crop 1 racing much more than what the blogs seem to indicate. That's the team's decision. I'll adapt to whatever they decide. But even if they don't, like I said, if 60% of the crown in the racing lobbies is attributed, and that's an assumption, go watch the replay if you'd like. But if 60% is going to go to Gen 0 racers, next season, and this is the best or tied for the best RTS, then I think this horse is going to probably pay itself off a few times over. And then in our case, we have a pretty solid Right Turf Firm stable. And this is from the sire of 9925, which is At the Track, I think it's called, or the one that looks like it's a jockey if you're reviewing the bloodlines. I guess that's the other horse. I can go to him instead. I'll even share with you where he's racing, because they're all registered. You don't have to snipe anybody when Crown's at 20 cents. Thunderstorm. So I'll show you the race. I'll pay off the tees, and then I will go to the bloodline page as well. He is racing. Oh, why didn't that work? View race. He is racing. Oh, Farmer's Commemorative. That's aptly named. 80% chance of rain, grade 3, 11 furlongs. Certainly, I think a horse that's right turf soft, an 80% chance, and I think it's a pretty solid distance horse. Like I said, if a left turf soft horse enters that race, the left turf soft's probably realistically the favorite, but I should be right up there in win equity. So going into that bloodline, drilling in there, when I say At the Track or 9925, it's the one that's got the jockey. It's the At the Track one. If you do the view on SoulScan, all of us OGs that can't stop saying the serial numbers, it will tell you the exact serial number when you go to view SoulScan. So when we talk about 9921, 9922, 9923, 9924, this is what we're referring to, the serial number there. So that was a long way of saying, one, we don't have RTS pieces, generally speaking, but we don't have anything at RT, so Right Turf Soft or Right Turf Firm, that has this sire in it. So we will actually use this piece breeding. We can take advantage of the in-house discounts that are allowed to stables, and we'll use it with our Right Turf Firm pieces, trying to keep them Right Turf Firm, or at least have it be like a 2-generation play that, maybe it ends up being a 0-star soft or a half-star soft, but the next breed will push it back to firm, is kind of the logic there. But like I said, I think even in just racing equity alone, it probably would have made sense. And in my conversations with Crypto Hog and Ghost and a few others, basically me saying, what the heck, you guys are sharper than me at claimers. Why didn't anybody else claim this? Because no one did. I didn't win the claimer. I was awarded the only claim. It kind of speaks to what we talked about with kind of the Ocean View. I think it's Ocean View stables sweep of a lot of floor racing eligible horses. That is when Crown is 30 cents, 40 cents. Like, the floor eligible racers is the most positive EV play you could potentially have. I've always tried to build our stable intentionally, sustainably, and have a longer time horizon than if Crown was 10 cents, 3 days ago, 4 days ago. I don't think it's going to go back to 10 cents. But I also don't think it's going to stay at 34 or 41 cents, at least not long term. Could we ride it out for a month, 2 months, 10 months? Who knows? I don't decide what the markets are. But what I can evaluate is, what do I need this horse to be able to do from a win-play show standpoint? Within that is a small factor of what would the Crown stimulus have to look like. My assumptions are more or less, how profitable can a horse like this be at 10 or 15 cents Crown, not 20 cents Crown? So the more Crown goes up, the better. Again, I believe in the project. That's why I share time with you guys and share thoughts with you guys. But certainly I'm going to build a lot more conservative in my evaluation of horses. So I guess that's my way of saying, kind of be careful in what you're doing. Now, if those minimum viable racing eligible horses pay themselves off in 2 days, it probably doesn't matter, right? Because they paid themselves off in 2 days. But if you're trying to make inroads in the game, it's probably smarter to take a more measured approach to let's get a piece that I can work with longer term, because in the event that Crown does go down, that strategy is not as viable as it once was. You have horses that have become less desirable, whereas you could have just had a piece that was actually sought after. And I'm not talking Thunderstorm, I'm talking whatever's in your price range, at a place that you've thought about or talked to community members of, where can I race this horse effectively or profitably? So that's actually what we will segue into. Shout out to, I think it's Painsy, probably an homage to the crypto degenerate Gainsy, but he was referred to us about buying a horse, and he said filly, and I gave him a long list of Crop 1 fillies. We have a lot of Crop 1 fillies. What we don't have is a lot of Crop 1 foals that I'm very interested in moving. I do feel very strongly in a lot of our Crop 1 foals on the colt side. And I do the fillies for the bloodline standpoint, or I think they're going to be good racers as well. So it ended up where I wasn't really able to help him because I didn't really have anything, again, on the colt side for Crop 1. If you want to talk about Crop 3s that'll drop on the weekend, you want to talk about Crop 2 and you're looking for colts, reach out to us on Twitter, or someone else can get you in contact with us. Because we'll certainly have supply available, and we're open-minded on fillies, but in a lot of cases, we're keeping a fair bit of our fillies. So Painsy was referred, he reached out, looks like he connected with Soulmates, and he even shared that there was some dialogue there about kind of what his thoughts were for the horse. I'm going to split screen this. I'll try to make them both a little bit bigger so you can see them both. Oh, no, now I'm going to lose it completely. Let's go the other way. So he got an S- colt, 7 preferences, Crop 1, so it can race on Monday for our 50,000 Derby. Looks like this took place about 5 hours ago. Since then, I wonder if since then we've had anything. I'm going to thumb through a couple of these. Well, I guess it could. Just want to see in this sort of price range if we've had much sense. I think this is a racing eligible horse here, but MK, we'll look at this. We'll grab a bunch of them here. We'll just kind of work through them as quick as we can. So I'm not seeing a ton in the 50K price range, at least in the afternoon. God, there was a lot of horse sales today, which for those that are new that are interested in participating in racing, the marketplace fees, the claiming fees. So if someone claims a horse, it's in a 5K claimer. The person that's making that claim actually pays 5% more than 5K. All that is accumulated along with 5% or what is it, 20% on breeding is accumulated, and then that's distributed back to actual racers based on their pro rata portion of race entry fees. So if we're responsible for 2% of race entry fees, we are getting during this growth phase 2% of that stimulus. In prior months, that was very meaningful to us, and obviously we're appreciative for it, regardless of how meaningful it is for us. Again, part of yesterday's conversation was if Crown's anywhere near these levels, the Derby stimulus and the plan for Derby stimulus sort of pales in comparison to the actual price of Crown. So there probably needs to be some thought about how do we make sure that we're encouraging and rewarding the behavior we would like to see. So this is an A+ filly. Not a lot of preferences, but it's a filly, and it's probably pretty cheap price on a filly. Another A+ filly. Better preferences, races in 2 seasons, so I would refer to that as a Crop 2. It's a 0-year-old horse, can race in 2 seasons, Crop 2. Next, when the calendar turns, the next ones that'll drop on was Monday morning. Those will be Crop 3, and at that point, they'll be racing eligible 2 months from Monday, basically. Got breeder here that sold. I don't know. It's a broodmare, meaning it's literally pregnant now. I don't know if it was pregnant before or after the sale. After. So shout out to Golden Boot. That's Nate LFC, another fellow Minnesotan. He bought this for 44 12K and then paid about 10 grand to breed with Ajax, which is something that Wolof would help manage at that point. I thought Minnesota people were nice. I thought Minnesota people would embrace each other. I thought maybe Nate would breed with Saturn, who won the first two majors at LTS. But now I know where to hold Nate in my hierarchy of favorite people. But certainly 44K for something he's pursuing, kind of right turf firm, right dirt firm, that he could breed how he wanted to. He gets a foal from this on Monday. He can turn around and breed it again on, I guess, Monday for the next season. He's in the chat here. Let's see what he's got to say for himself. I had an option for LTF outcome. Wow, that is questionable. No, LTF is fun. You can join Soulmates there. He's the one pursuing it the hardest. And so is shout out to OAB. OAB's really got an interesting piece to make LTF. If you're ever crazy and you do have access to breeding reports, like if you run breeding reports with Persian Bold, which is S- LDF colt, that actually can make some pretty solid preferences to make an LTF horse. Will it make the right distance preference? Because we've talked about this on previous streams. I mean, LTS is kind of predisposed to prefer longer distance. All the sires that exist there like a longer distance. So what would be effective for LTF would be to introduce start and speed. So I think people that work with Persian Bold might be better than people that work with RTF. And again, I have no vested interest in if anybody breeds with Persian Bold. It's kind of a thought. We're not pursuing it ourselves, but I know plenty of people are, and that the person that does it the best is probably going to be rewarded handsomely for it. I'm going to pause here and scroll through chat. I just seen Nate once I chided him for his breeding decision, so I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Lacey had said, we actually converted quite a few of the new people to racing, so that's exciting. Yeah, I mean, there's more liquidity in the Crown Pool now, but even regardless of liquidity, the easiest way to accumulate Crown has actually been racing. It always has been, even when Crown came from PFPs, and you got that on a monthly basis. The Crown gift, again, shout out to the team for the tokenomics, has kind of outpaced that, because if you race effectively, you can certainly generate a lot of Crown in a short period of time. And that doesn't mean the racers that are generating that Crown are going to dump on you. What you see on your screen, the 1193.36 is the entire balance of Crown we have. That does not mean I'm not a believer in Crown. What it means is for every dollar I can put into our stable by buying a colt that we can use to breed, like we did with Thunderstorm, or buying a filly that we can breed fairly effectively, my dollar goes further if I buy horses. That might not be true for everybody, especially if you want to be more of a passive participant. So I personally don't think, and I would have been wrong because it went to 41 cents, but I personally didn't think that I could generate a higher ROI personally investing in Crown as opposed to buying the horses that we did. So that is my rationale there. Ian said he's going to change the terms of service, so people with multiple stables should only be putting in one claim, not one from every account they have. Don't know if he's done it yet. I don't know how you police that, because other than word of mouth, how does he know who's got 5 stables at this point? And I said it yesterday, I'll say it again. We've only ever had one stable. We will only ever have one stable. We've never entered more than 3 horses in a race that we would control, except for prior to when the 3-horse max was implemented. Yeah, Lacey again saying, I only claim horses that I thought could perform without bumped Crown prices. Yeah, I think that's logical and how everybody should pursue it. Could you make a nice small cash grab now? Sure, but there's an opportunity cost. Like, even if you are making a profit now, let's say you bought those 12,000 Derby, so $150 horses, you're tying up $150 times 10 horses or 15 horses, or whatever people want to do. And maybe you do turn around and get them claimed, or you turn around and sell them, but you're tying that up for a period of time. That is it possible that there's a better option for you on the market now, or by networking? Networking is going to be one of the most important things you can do. Is there a better option available to you by networking that won't be an option for you when you're done kind of crown farming with mediocre at best horses? So I think you can gauge how I feel about farming with no expectation of actually winning, hell, even hitting the board. This did surprise me. I'm not going to even try to pronounce the name, but this was another one of the sales we saw today. Again, 44K, renamed already. Okay, so we have the comparable I was looking for. This all started with trying to find a comparable, and we found one. So we will evaluate those at the same time. MK was a big sale. Shout out to, I think that one came from Crypto Hog, actually. 70,000 list price again. So then 3,500, or basically $50, is going to the Derby stimulus at the end of the season. That's paid out to people that are actually racing. So $50 just from one sale, that's not meaningless. When you get all these sales in these days, that certainly adds up. You get all the claims today, that certainly adds up. I actually expect, even if breeding fees are flat or even down a little bit from last month, because again, my expectation of them being down is a function of you have to breed 2 weeks in a row, where normally you have to breed once a month. So that would explain a lot of that, even with the price action in Crown. But I think these marketplace fees and claiming fees might actually make the Derby stimulus higher than we've seen previously, which would be pretty crazy and pretty great. But certainly a really nice S-. It's an RTF. I personally love RTF. That's a biased statement. It's one of our archetypes. But I think, it's got a great balance of owners. Like, I think, again, super biased statement. The best stables or the most fun people compete at RTF. And I think it's pretty balanced. There's a lot of archetypes that have questions that need to be answered, in my opinion. And Commission's a loyal listener. Most times I'm talking about how great Primetime is and Churro is. So I'm going to at least exercise caution on those horses looming over the population. So it's best for you to try to understand what your objectives are. And as a part of that, think where you want to race, where you want to compete. Now, do you not care? Do you just want 3 horses and you don't care where they are? That's fine. That's a decision you can make. Do you intentionally want 3 different horses that can race in 3 different archetypes? You buy a left turf firm, you buy a right turf firm, you buy a left turf soft. Chances are those horses aren't ever going to race against each other. And that way you don't have to worry about, I can't enter 2, or I don't want to enter 2 horses in this race, so I would rather segregate these populations. You can do that, but that's at the opportunity cost of kind of synergies you can build in your stable. If you have 2 fillies and 1 colt, suddenly you can breed, and they're in the same archetype, you can likely breed those 2 fillies with that 1 colt, realistically, probably as many times as you want, or many seasons in a row as you want. You'll get an in-house discount on that. And you can try to build out an archetype within your own stable. So I like RTF. It's got a great user base, I think, and it doesn't have an S+. So there's 4 S pluses. 2 of the S pluses are, call it neutral. They're 0 star, 0 star, 0 star that are labeled as right dirt firm. So you could call those over everything. Great way to level up your horses if you don't have preferences. You just want to move up and grade very quickly. They've proven to be effective for that, even in live, certainly in V1 and V2 of beta. The other 2 S pluses are right dirt soft and right turf soft. And those horses are objectively better than the 2 I just profiled that are 0 star, 0 star, 0 star. So in my opinion, that makes RDS a little bit clunky, or at least something that I would exercise caution in. Same for RTS. because you have an S plus over that, and there's not a lot of S's at RTS to begin with. At RDS, there's actually fewer yet. There's a couple great pieces. Shout out to Doc Holliday at Mike Sauer's Tombstone Stables, and then Soul Big Brain's got Night Saturn, which is a really great S minus. And then it kind of tapers off quickly there. So in my opinion, those loom pretty large over those populations. At RDF, you have the two S26s, which shout out to Lolly's Legend, or from Lieutenant Lollipop, managed by Wolof, and Kamish, Solonaut Stables. They're kind of a perfect matching situation to breed together. But if I'm evaluating risk when I'm building my stable, I do evaluate that as a risk of, okay, even if I have nice pieces at RDF, even if I have great pieces at RDF, can I compete with that long-term if my objective is to have the best horse in that archetype? Now, maybe you don't care about having the best horse. Maybe you want to have a dozen horses that give you flexibility of where you can race. So if Primetime and Lolly's Legend breed together and they make an S plus that's got 9 preferences, if you get caught in a race with that horse on that day, if you had this 12 horse scenario I was talking about, you at least have 11 other bullets in the chamber that day. So that's a viable strategy as well. I mean, that's kind of personally what we've done at all of our archetypes. I'll quickly go through the rest. LDF doesn't have an S plus, doesn't have an S26. The best horses there are S20s, the Gen 01. So 7 preferences, 20 total boosts. They can come from Ziggy, which is 9921. It can come from Master, which is 9922. It can come from Scuba, which is 9923. There's some great S minus pieces there. GVG is a community legend. He's got 2 of them. We talked about OEB's Persian Bold as an S minus. Shout out to Eddie Pocono Racing. He's got probably the best S minus there, and Shawnee Bear, and he's got it priced very affordably in the breeding barn. There's a few other. I don't mean to snub anybody. Left Dirt Soft has some flexibility to it as well, but I've talked to him about this at length, so I hope he doesn't consider it that I'm fudding him. But shout out to Peep, YSM, the favorite host of Twitter Spaces, and some Twitch streams as well. They are very dominant at LDS. They deserve that. They did a great job curating their stable and making inroads there and getting pieces that they can breed out further and further and have multiple sires that they can use in-house. And we've done that at RTF. I'm not innocent. We've done that at LTS. We've done it at LDF. I just don't think we've done it to the level that they've done that. So if you want to compete in LDS, and they've got some great promotional breeding stuff going on as well, just know that there's going to be one stable that has a lot of the best pieces, and they're going to have volume with those best pieces. So when I say Primetime and Lolly's Legend bring together and make one S plus, now obviously they can do that every season, but at the end of the day, that's one horse. That's not a half dozen horses. I got off the rails here. LTS is another one that is pretty tightly held. I mean, I'll FUD myself here. Again, Eddie Pocono Racing made some splashes, and I mean big splashes, buying a lot of the best pieces and unique pieces at LTS, including fillies at the top. Even the archetype is weird enough that even getting a filly at LTS in general, especially towards the top level, so S minus or S, is pretty hard. So he's got a few of them, and he's going to put out great horses. And if you go through, again, this is what you're doing with these gap data tools, is if you go into, I'll refresh here, the current population here in a second. And again, it's kudos to him. It's not me trying to FUD him or tell people don't race at LTS. We're an LTS. I am not afraid. So we'll go to age 1. So this is just going to be crop 1 horses. This is the horses that are racing eligible on Monday, which is going to be very exciting. Not a great impersonation though. So we do have S pluses here, and we have S's. I think there's only like 13. You can tell I look at this shit too much. 2 S pluses here, but spoiler alert, I believe they're both Eddies. He renamed them, so I don't know for sure, but let's pull them up. Bocono Racing. Oh, Phantom Stable. Did it sell? No. Whose is this? I don't even know if I know who Phantom Stable is. I don't know who this is. I'll have to learn. I need to educate myself, apparently. But there you go. You get 2 S pluses there. And Eddie has some strength in the S ranks as well. JPEG Lord, managed by Ghost, that also has Golden Stables. He's got a really nice S as well. So you just have to be mindful of what's in front of you. Like when we talked about Gen Zero, I said, I don't know that there's necessarily anything in front of me. And again, this is evaluating this at the top end. If you work down, you don't have that visibility. If you're talking about an A, you couldn't possibly realistically understand what's just above you, right? Because you'd have to start at the S plus, work your way down to get to the A. Like that's not feasible. That's not going to work. But if you can understand like how many pieces exist, so if we take S plus off and we go to A, there's 33 A's. So if we're looking at allowance races, A's and A minuses were great for allowance races. We'll go to A minus. There's only 9. And I know some of this is changing in the schedule, but this is what I'm evaluating if I have bought an A minus LTS piece is who's going to race with me. So age 1 and age 1. Everybody eventually kind of wants grade as a big factor to kind of vanish a little bit. Obviously it's useful and it's definitely helpful for new people. But for lack of a better term, this subgrade of A versus A minus or A versus A plus, that subgrade is kind of your cohort of, in all likelihood, who you're going to be racing against if everybody's racing to win. I will pay off this tease about the Madonna's full. Let's thumb through the rest here quick, being cognizant of I got about a half hour before the professional streamers take the stage, and I don't know how to raid them, so I'll probably just stop a little bit early. But yeah, we started this with me saying I like right to affirm, then I talk for 20 minutes or so. That's what you get when you tune into me. But certainly a good piece. If you go to RTF, there's less at the top there than there is at other archetypes. That's the point of evaluate your competition. So we're looking at 1-year-olds. I'll make this a little bit bigger. Gap Data doesn't like me zooming in apparently, which is not their fault. I don't think it's probably a Power BI issue. So I'll say what is above me. So S plus is above me and S is above me. So there are 21 total horses that are above me. And again, they may not all necessarily be better than you. Like this little A, now I'm going to probably FUD Crypto Hog because I'm guessing that's his horse, or at least from his bloodline. This horse has 1 preference right, 1.5 preference turf, 1/2 preference firm. We don't know yet, but this horse that has, 6.5 preferences and is an S minus, so it's 1 subgrade lower, S versus S minus, but only, it's actually like 3 preferences ahead. Is it possible that this is a better racer? In betas, in particular beta V1, I would say the preferences would have carried this horse to make this horse better. But we don't know. No one's raced bred horses after the last updates to race math, which included tuning up distance preference and tuning down preferences as a whole, our global preferences. The other horse, before we get to the comparison, maybe actually 3 more here. Ashley Rose. I saw this purchase. I mean, it was a big deal, and 125 list price. So there's tools at your disposal, and I don't know the new owner. I probably don't know the old owner, to be honest with you. When I see a horse like this, it sold yesterday at 11 p.m. God's Standard Time, or Central Standard Time in God's country, whichever you prefer. And not more than basically like 13 hours later, it's selling for, basically 50% more or less. This was a bit of a head scratcher for me, and I'm not trying to embarrass the new owner. And in fact, I'll scroll down and we'll just look at the attributes. We know it's an S. We know that it has 5 total preferences, which is not a bad number to have. I definitely try to stay at, probably for us, we're bigger stable. If I can get the 6.5 and above, that's great. This is probably a workable piece, but I bring it up to say that, in my opinion, unless this was like a snipe, which I guess it was listed 1 minute before it sold, so maybe that was viewed as someone sniped this horse, or it was a prearranged deal, one of the two. But what changed in the market yesterday to today that would warrant a 50% increase in the price of the horse? It wasn't crown price, because at 11 my time yesterday and 3 o'clock my time today, crown is essentially the same price. So this is why I would say ask questions. Like, people will help you. I want to help you. Like, get a second opinion, get a third opinion on something. If a horse has been listed on the marketplace for an hour, which in this case, it wasn't. It was only there for 15 minutes. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the one that's not valuing this correctly. But if a horse has been there for an hour, chances are the OG stables have seen it and they've decided they either don't need it, don't want it, or it's not priced correctly. And again, I'm not saying this is not priced correctly. It's not something I would have bought. So ask. People will help you. Don't ask the person you're buying it from, probably, but ask 2 other people in the community. There's plenty of reputable people in the community that would give you their best guess. Now, if crown goes from 10 cents or 15 cents to 41 cents and then back to 25 cents all in a matter of 3 or 4 days, the market is pretty tricky to understand. So even the best people are scratching their head on valuation on some stuff for sure, but ask them, they'll help. Commission's good. Monkey Tennis is good. I think Ghost knows values as well as anybody as well. The JJ is pretty good at it from RVA Racing. But to go into the bloodline here, so we've got a Ziggy 9921S with an S minus that made an S. So if you've heard me stream before or heard any of my content, I had put together a tool to evaluate foals, somewhat similar to this, but a little bit more in depth from a standpoint of what is my expectation for this horse. So if this is above average but not spectacular S minus, based on having 5 preferences instead of call it 7 or whatever, and it had A+ temper with a good but not the best ass, my expectation is probably that this is an S minus, or it's probably a lower on the spectrum S. And that's why I would get concerned about that, in my opinion. This is my opinion, because if I go to Right Dirt Firm, I can see, let's get out of the, I have to hit refresh. I struggle with taking filters off after I've left the page. So we'll go back into the, show you how I got there. If you go into foals, type your age range in. Again, I only want 1-year-olds for this analysis. There deserves to be a price difference between what is now a 1-year-old, which will be a 2-year-old racing eligible horse on Monday, versus a 0-year-old horse that will be 1 Monday, can't race for a full month. There deserves to be a value difference there. Right Dirt Firm. And then go to S plus and S. I'll even just go to S plus first, because I think there's a handful. Yeah, so there's 6 S pluses. So objectively, I would say that's probably ahead of. I mean, maybe this one's not, because it's 0 preference right, 1 dirt, half star firm. So if you want to say preferences are very, very, very important, then I guess there's a chance that one's not better. But then when you add in S's to that, so this Ashley Rose is part of this population. There's 57 of them. So if I go to Right Turf Firm instead, there's only 21. 57 versus 21. So if I'm buying a piece that I'm not sure is the best S or in the upper echelon of S, and there's 57 of them, all of a sudden I'm wondering, where do I race that horse if I think there's potentially, let's call it, of the 57, let's say it's roughly maybe 40, 35 for sure horses that are a little bit better than that. Doesn't mean it cannot be profitable, and it's a filly. Like, you can breed this. It's in all likelihood, in the meta we are in right now, like, there's not too many situations where something doesn't have a path towards profitability. I've only got 20 minutes, so I'll try to pick up the pace here, and I apologize for not catching most of the stuff in the chat. I'll try to thumb through it towards the end. Aurora, another one that is a broodmare, meaning it's already pregnant. I think this was bred after it was purchased. No, it was bred before. So bred with Zeus. I think that's either GVG or Poseidon. I confuse those two gentlemen. GVG probably took them up on that breeding offer. It's an S minus. I won't go into detail on this one other than show this. I won't point out where it ranges or where I think it ranges because we just did it on the last one. We'll run out of time. But another shout out to Ghost. I think for sure on my Mount Rushmore of PFL minds, whether or not he's beloved or villainized, I think he's one of the sharpest people in the game. And what I like about Ghost the most is actually he disagrees with me a lot and for a lot of other people as well. But I like people that push back on my assumptions. So in my head, I just told you, like, I like 6.5 preferences or a path towards doing something that I can clearly identify. This only has 3 total preferences. Now it has 0-star dirt. So does that mean you could make it a Right Turf Firm horse if you wanted to? Certainly. But actually above that, above and beyond that, what Ghost loves about this horse is it's got 3 start and 3 finish, and it doesn't have attributes anywhere else. So his assumption is that, yes, you have an S finish, but it's probably a strong S finish, and you have 3 start, which is probably a strong S start. And these might be weaker, but if we think distance preference is very important, which I would agree with, I certainly think it is, then are you buying 2 attribute stats as opposed to necessarily buying a horse? And I get that is like PFL 901, and I'll lose a lot of new people with that comment, but Ghost thinks it's a very useful piece. And in that respect, I agree with them. I'm a preference snob a little bit, so I struggle with it. And while we're talking about Ghost, again, he manages JPEG Lord Stable. I had mocked and ridiculed several people for them to buy this horse. I would have bought the horse, but I already have an S from 9924, which is a ticket taker window, Colt, that's already retired. We have probably a slightly better version of this horse. It would make no sense for me to buy this horse other than to race it. Now, the difference between mine and his is racing eligible. So when we talk about when I thought that Thunderstorm that I bought is amongst the very best existing racers at RTS, and I also acknowledge LTS could probably squeeze me a little bit, make it harder for me to dominate. If you go to LTS and you go to S, there are 12 racing. Certainly some are better. Shout out to Zach, which he's managing as well. Perlino has been a great horse through all the betas and live. Slow Gary, I think, is D Stables. Nightcrawler, I think, is Big Brain. Hello Newman is probably the most profitable horse in the game for reasons we won't go into. But there's 12 here. So when I said there was only 4 S minuses at RTS and no S's, I think my path towards having one of the best pieces at where I'm trying to race, again, if I don't get scooped by one of these LTS horses, I think my path is a little more clearly defined. Now, his horse is better, and his horse probably can beat my horse even if it races at RTS. So that's something I have to factor in as well. But if crown prices stay anywhere near these levels, I think this purchase is going to probably pay itself off on the track, like I talked about with our claim. And he's another stable that has an LTS focus that he can use this to breed and take advantage of paying 20% of the list price. We've got potentially 15 minutes if I rush. So anybody that's been here, well, I've sidetracked myself for like 40 minutes. We started saying Painsy is a new user in the space, or at least in PFL. He reached out to a few people. He ended up buying this for $50K. He asked kind of what my opinions of it were. I know he talked to Soulmates, who he got it from. It's a 7 preference, right? Dirt firm. The comparable that we happen to find, again, if you're shopping for something, ask questions, but certainly check for comparables. When we've got all of this volume, 1 within the token itself, 2 within PFPs, but 3 within the in-game marketplace, do exactly this. Find yourself a comparable. So there are differences here. So this looks to be about the same, right? 7 preferences, right dirt firm, 7 preferences, right dirt firm. You can argue whether or not 3 on dirt is better than 3 on right. I don't know that I care in this sense. If it was on firm, I guess I would probably prefer that one. A lot of people disagree with me on that, but different subject for a different day. The key distinctions here are this is an age 1 colt that can race on Monday. Colt probably means it's not a very equitable breeding piece. Now, if he's got lesser RDF fillies that he wants to breed with it and take advantage of paying 20% of the list price, he can pay for this horse by kind of his cost savings within breeding. And then on the other side of the screen, we've got a filly foal, which means it's age 0, which means it cannot race on Monday. It would race effectively 1 month later. So fillies have been more desirable, but this is a month sooner into the progression of being able to race. And if you compare the bloodlines are actually pretty comparable. These are things that OGs can help you with. Astro, which is 9922, is one of the more heavily used sires within the Gen 0 population. If this was a filly, he couldn't breed with another Astro. In this case, until it's no longer on the screen. So inbreeding is if it's here, or eventually here. Once it falls off the screen, you could use Astro again. Again, this is a colt, so he's not the one that's breeding. People would breed with him instead. But Astro, more commonly used, most cases would make it slightly less sought after. Doesn't make it less desirable. And on the other side, the filly from 9923 Scuba, like it's only from an A mare. So when I talked about that S- and the S making an S, and my expectation was it was in all likelihood on the lower end of the S's. This is another case where they have the same total preferences, 7 and 7. This is an S-, this is an S-, but that this is from an A+ and this is from an A. I don't know this to be true, but if you gun to my head and asked me to pick based on which one is the better pure racer, I'm going to guess this one because the mare in this situation was objectively a better horse than the mare in this situation. But again, differentiating factors was this was more heavily used. This is less common at RDF. So that is the analysis on the differences between the two. The pricing, this was again $50K, which is what, $600. This was $44K, which is what, $550. So the price is about the same. So the difference is filly, that's 2 months away, colt that is a couple days away, or not 2 months, call it 5 weeks. So maybe that's a reasonable comparison. I don't know RTF or RDF as well as others. This is an area that I will defer to other people. So ask people that actually know the subject area that they're talking about. Quickly trying to work through the chat, being cognizant of the best show starts in 10 minutes. Kamish says RDS is much stronger in live than it was in beta. I agree. And, some of the breeding stuff that we'd seen was a lot of these true top tier colts. So the Doc Holidays of the world, which is a great ass we talked about from Sowers, Tombstone Racing. It was in different hands at the time. Shout out to David in the chat. I seen him here. Always appreciate the work David does for the community, and another person that is much more knowledgeable and Crown the tokenomics behind it than I am. So if you have questions there, ask him. But I started that by saying that it wasn't as available to breed with in the beta. So I think we're seeing RDS be better because of access, which I think is ultimately a good thing. Primetime and Lolly 0 for 5 at making S+. Yeah, Ghost and I have a theory on this we can talk about in a different stream, I guess. Beta plus live 0 for 5. Yeah, that is a field spat for sure. I mean, we've seen a few of them out there with Eddie's dynamic S- duo at LTS, not quite making the mark so far here in live, but obviously it made a killer or two in beta. Sekas, shout out to you. I saw you on with Monos. Was it yesterday? Yeah, I went through a few purchases, but not necessarily fulls. I know that Doughboy, who's a much better host than I am, is streaming Monday. He said he was going to stream for 12 hours. I don't know if he's serious or not, but if he's going to stream for 12 hours, I think regardless of your time zones, you'll be able to catch part of that stream. Grandpa's Do It Better. I want to make sure I get the name right. I think until Foals race, evaluating Foals will be difficult. Good thing they start soon. Yeah, I agree. All we're doing is using what we learned throughout betas, which the race math was different, the breeding outcomes were different, to inform our decisions and our expectations of what to have. But certainly I come into these foals with an open mind to try to be able to adapt if what I thought was going to be a great foal isn't a great foal. Sekas just picked up Reaver. Would love to know your thoughts. I'm going to run out of time here. We'll have to catch that one tomorrow. I did see the sale. I love the big sales. The TLDR is, I like people making an investment in the long-term sustainability of the game. And to me, that's more buying nicer pieces that are workable long-term than it is entering a horse with the expectation that the horse gets last place. Yeah, another point for Kamish. The S Plus Blue, which was previously owned by Luis, I believe is the pronunciation we go with, who was instrumental in allowing a lot of people to breed with 101s. He had two of the colts in that scenario. Has made RDS a lot more competitive. Kamish thinks Churro on Blue, so that's the S Plus RTS Colt and the S Plus RDS Filly. The 2 505 matches is the best full on paper. I can't refute best, but it goes back to what I said earlier of evaluate your competition. So certainly it's an S Plus. It doesn't have a lot of preferences by the nature of making that breed happen. So which archetype is it going to race in, or is it just going to be good enough that it can race everywhere? Now, Ian has been on the record saying Secretariat didn't win on all archetypes either. So I hope there's some limits to some dominance that we could potentially see in scenarios like this. But I'd also say that if it's going to be right and 0-star dirt or turf, either way, and have some soft, I think it'll do very well at RDS for sure. It probably does pretty well at RTS as well. I mean, I think there were some good RTS pieces that were bred. You bred Churro with Diva is yours. So if you understand your competition and what you're up against, I say all of this to say, if you go to LTS, we knew there was less fillies at LTS to begin with at the very high end. So those ones that made S pluses at LTS, even if they combine 2 1-of-1s and breeding them further becomes more complicated, they're so much further ahead of everything else. Like our best LTS filly Gen 0 was an A+. We didn't even have an S-, much less an S. So if you're 2 subgrades ahead of us, I think even if Blue and Churro made the best foal from a true absolute horsepower standpoint, could one other horse in a different archetype be more dominant based on the competition it's up against? So we are at 10 past the hour. The other show, I believe, starts in 5 minutes. So I appreciate everybody hopping in. I appreciate people making some comments or questions or wanting to see some stuff. If you got ideas for topics you'd like me to cover, certainly reach out to us on Twitter, and I can try to formulate a show around some of those things. And we'll continue the poorly advertised and not as generous offers others have made. But if anybody asks a question or comment, regardless if they're new to PFL or existing user, and you breed with Roland Garros, reach out to me. It's S- cultivars in the barn for $50. If you breed with that, you'll pay the transaction fee, so you'll pay the 5%. But if you reach out to me, I'll refund you the $50 you paid for us. So, yeah, all good, people. Check out that breeding report stream. Hey, it's dense, as is everything I ever say. But I think I go through all of our LTS pieces, or at least prep the materials for all of our LTS pieces. If you want the actual document that I review in that stream, you or anybody else, reach out and I'd be happy to share that as well. But with that said, again, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Go check out After Dark. Watch some spicy claimers. I think if let's pull it up real quick. If the field size for the 200K claimer got big enough, if there was enough entrants, it might be the highest purse ever in PFL, which is kind of fun to say about a claimer, or ironical to say about a claimer, however you view it. Yeah, I don't know if any horse has won $500. I know the Kentucky Derby and other majors have a $500 prize pool, but I think this is going to be the biggest win. So I'll be tuning in. You should as well. Thanks for joining. See ya, guys, later.